If I hear anymore,
You want to write it down on a piece of paper? I might have even read this before.
when I grow up, I want to be Charlie Boy. Impersonate Charlie Boy.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Smithfield Town Council meeting. Good evening. I'd like to call the Smithfield Town Council meeting to order Tuesday, July 11th, 2023. There were no votes taken in executive session. It's prayer. We come to you today, please a prayer. We come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of community. Amen.
Amen.
Salute to the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. My mic. Emergency evacuations and health notification.
Thank you, Council President. There's two main exits from the Town Council chambers. To the left of the stage, up the stairs will take you out the back of the building. The back of the council chambers to the right, the stairs will take you out the front of the building. just past that on your right is the men's facility. Up the stairs to the left is the ladies' facility. Please do not use the elevator in time of emergency.
Thank you, sir. Presentations, Fire Chief Special Recognition Award.
All right, well, I don't want to turn my back to the audience, so I'll go this way. This evening, we're going to recognize a member of the public that assisted at a fire we had recently. Deputy, you can join me up front since you came in late. So this is Deputy Chief Steve Catrini. He was the incident commander of the fire we'll be discussing in a second here. So on May 16th, we had a fire on Melissa Circle, and a member of the public stepped up and assisted at that incident prior to fire department arriving, and Deputy Chief Catrini arrived with the first complement of apparatus, so he was there before myself, and I don't know if you had contact with Mr. Wilson or not. Okay. But anyways, we're recognizing Nick Wilson, who works for Monroe Dairy, and he was delivering milk that morning, I believe, and whatever we deliver off the truck. And I had asked him, I spoke to him this morning, I asked him to give us a firsthand account of what happened that morning and what he did, so that you hear it in his first words, because he was the first one there. So would you like to come up and explain it?
Good evening, guys. So, yeah, I wasn't the first person to show up to the fire. There was a gentleman that had been there a minute or two before me, and he was on the phone with you folks. There's pretty bad reception there, but he was kind of, loudly speaking to his phone, trying to get the message across, but he hung up his phone and said they repeated the address back to me. I believe they're on the way. The fire at that point was, devastating. It was obvious the house was, probably going to be a total loss. I delivered milk to this house, this customer. I showed up, and instead of delivering milk, I did not deliver milk. I put on my work gloves and I got out of my truck and didn't park it that close to the house like I normally do. And I proceeded to go to the house, to help this gentleman and find out what's going on. Normally the folks are home, but they were not home that morning. And, we could hear the dog barking. Both me and him knew. It's like, okay, this dog is in the house. And, we checked it's a new house, checked some doors, checked some windows, and they're all locked. Instead of going through one of the windows in the front, which would have been hazardous to either of our houses, we checked around back and were able to break through a slider in the back. They had plenty of, 40-pound planters we could throw through the window. So I threw the planter through the window, and luckily, as milkmen, we know our dogs, more than we know the people. We see them more than people, and we have a relationship with them. So, the dog was scared, but luckily I've seen this dog dozens and dozens, 100 times, and I was able to get in and grab the dog and get out. The door only had a hole, this big at first, but luckily I knew to put my gloves on and kind of, smash through the glass without getting hurt, and, assess that the smoke was not that bad in this part of the house, 6,000, 5,000 square foot home. And I was able to get the dog out and rescue Daisy, and inform the owners. Unfortunately, I had to tell her personally that her house was, on fire in a bad way, because we have their contact information. So, but she informed me that there were no other, people or pets in the house. And at that point, I knew, my job was done. The fire department, arrived soon after that conversation with Stacy. Oh, excuse me, I'm not supposed to say her name. And I waited for her to show up. And then at that point, the firemen were engaged, and I became support for her until her husband arrived and other more talented crisis. Thank you. They're both saying no over there. Yeah, my boss is saying no. So they're saying, please no. Right?
So to recognize his efforts, also I want to point out, he brought his fan club tonight. I mean, they kept coming in the door and coming in the door, so they're here. They're all here tonight. So from the fire department, when we recognize people for good deeds, we have a fire chief's award here. It's called the Special Recognition Award that we give to people and to our firefighters as well. And they're unique because they're each individually numbered. So I'm going to give you that. And it comes with we have a certificate we put together. It's called the Chief Special Recognition Award. Presented to Nick Wilson in the recognition of your heroic act of saving a family's dog during a house fire at 1 Melissa Circle on May 16, 2023. Awarded on Tuesday, July 11, 2023. And your award point is number 21, and you're the only one that's ever going to have it. So congratulations.
You guys want to go?
It's up to you.
Wait, well, Hopper, we want to shake his hand too.
Thank you.
Give him a minute.
That's the whole room.
All right. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to minutes. Move that the minutes of the June 20th, 2023 executive session meeting held pursuant to section 42-465A2, potential litigation of Rhode Island General Law, section 42-46-5A1, personnel to interview Christopher Bellotti, Jean Marcella, Rich Silvestri, and Hannah Martin for possible appointment or reappointment to a town board or commission be approved as recorded and sealed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item B, move that the minutes of the June 20th, 2023 open session meeting be approved as recorded.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 7, consider, discuss, and act upon the following possible appointments and reappointments. A, Conservation Commission appointment with a term expiring in July of 2026.
Mr. President, I move that the Smithfield Town Council appoint Ryan Sylvester to the Conservation Commission with a term expiring in July of 2026.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, Planning Board appointment with a term expiring in May of 2026.
Mr. President, I move that the Smithfield Town Council appoint Catherine Lynn to the Planning Board for a term expiring in May of 2026.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to public hearings. Conduct a public hearing to consider an application for tax stabilization from Bay Crane Northeast LLC. I declare this public hearing open.
Mr. President, I
Anyone
have
from the public can,
a recusal form.
thank you. The public's invited to come up and speak.
Have Chris Solis come up and get it over here.
Okay. Just state your name and your address, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Chris Celeste, Town Assessor for Smithfield. We have before us tonight the proposed tax stabilization agreement with Bay Crane Northeast. As we've discussed, they've brought a very large amount of equipment, about $24 million worth of new assets to the town, which represents actually 16% increase in our tangible assets of the whole town. And we propose to give them a 5-year tax agreement, which you have a copy of the proposal, which would incentivize them to continue to operate business in the town and expand business in the town, hopefully in the future. And this also helps the town as it gives us a stabilized payment over the next 5 years that is about $250,000 more than what we would be getting at their normal amount of assets over the past.
I have a question. If the tax stable agreement is over a period of 5 years,
Correct.
would Bay Crane be obligated to maintain that personal property value of over 1,400% of their current?
Correct. So they don't technically have to maintain it, but they will have to make those payments as if it was maintained. So the stabilization sets out minimum tax payments based on as if all those assets continue to remain. If they do add more assessment, it can go up, but it can never go down from what the minimum is.
What if some of the assets leave?
Then they would still have to be required through the contract to make those minimum payments as called out in the exhibit at the end.
Thank you.
Chris, are there other stabilization agreements coming down the pike that you know of anytime soon?
That, not very soon, but possibly. There's the warehouse on Stillwater that may end up, we may do one, but that's going to be different than this because that's more of a real estate thing and it's a longer term, and this is more of a short term because it's tangible assets, they depreciate quickly and they're also very movable. So we just kind of want to get them to keep them here for that, at least that 5-year period so that we can count on that payment.
Is this their first application?
I believe they applied in the past, but not before. So last year we passed an ordinance to allow the town to end, we had enabling legislation at the state. Then we codified it locally with an ordinance that sets the framework for these stabilization agreements up to a 10-year maximum. So now that when they applied previously, we didn't have the mechanism to offer that to them at the time. And so now we do, so they're trying again. And here we are with that. Now it's allowable under the ordinance that we passed last year.
How does this benefit the town?
So the benefit to the town is that, well, they brought the assets in with the expectation of some sort of agreement. The agreement itself will benefit the town because it guarantees payments over the next 5 years, which would normally not be guaranteed. All tangible assets have the tendency to come and go. Sometimes new assets come in, but a lot of times new assets leave. They also depreciate quite quickly, 10% a year. So that's good to keep some stability in that, because again, it is a large chunk of what our tangible assets are in the town at this point.
So how do you keep track of all of these tangible assets in the town?
So it's self-reported. There's a statute that requires that every person that owns rateable real estate must report a true and exact account to the assessor each year annually. So they send us in a return. It declares what they have for assets. Well, not every business. Every business is supposed to do it. We get about a 50% return rate on those, and we estimate the rest. So it would be a self-reported would be the answer to that.
Yeah, let's say we turn this down. Okay, so they've already been assessed for 2022, is that correct?
That is correct.
I mean, as of 2022.
As of 12/31/22, that's
For the
correct.
2023 tax that's
Correct.
due this month, right?
Correct.
So they would have to pay the full, it looks like $1.4 million.
That's correct.
And, but then they could move one or more of these assets out of town, is that?
They do have other
Correct.
facilities in towns with much lower tangible tax rates than we have. That's
And
true.
are these nearby facilities?
Avon and New Haven.
And
so-
you said the tax is much lower there?
Avon's tax rate's $27 a thousand, and New Haven's is about 31, and ours is almost 60.
Ours is almost 60.
Yeah, so
So
probably half.
theoretically, they could move all of these out of the town, and we wouldn't get any more than the 1.4 million that we were getting now.
Correct. We would get it for 1 year, which would upset the entire balance of the tax levy, which, and then, but what would happen is in a future year, say for instance, they did remove the assets and brought them to another place, then we would have to raise the tax rate significantly back up and then some, and to make up the difference.
So we've already come up with a tax levy for this year.
Correct.
So that tax levy is based on the assumption that we're going to approve this agreement.
I
Is
had to make that
correct?
assumption, that's correct.
Right. You had to make the assumption, and why did you have to make that?
In order to set a tax rate and to make the levy match the budgetary need, I had to plug a number in, and if I put the full value with the expectation of even the possibility of the agreement, we would have ended up with a lower tax rate, and it wouldn't have been enough to, and then say if it passed, we would have to raise the tax rate at the last minute, so that would probably be worse. So I made the assumption that it would be there, so we would have a sort of an accurate tax rate, hopefully, based on that.
So they're saying that they purchased all this equipment in 2022 and not prior to that, right?
During calendar year 2022, that's correct.
In regards to section 321, the 23, it references the property shall be assessed for and shall pay the portion of the tax. Who would be responsible for the assessment? Is that on the town, or would the company provide that assessment?
Let me read that real quick, and then I can answer you better. Hold on 1 second. So that's in the ordinance, 321-23. Extent of exemption or stabilization?
Yes.
That would be me. I'm the assessor, so I would assess them, yes, in that circumstance.
Okay.
Basically, the assessment's there. I would do the calculations.
So in regards to stabilization, that would be you who would be.
Correct. They will report to me next year what assets they have. If the assets increase from what they have now, after it's depreciated, then that stabilized payment will actually increase. If the assets don't increase, then the stabilized payment will stay as is.
Because I think that's one of the concerns that comes in with the self-reporting aspect of just making sure that we have somebody on top of making sure that, assets are maintained.
Correct. So they have been good about reporting in the past. Historically, what I've seen, I've only been here a couple of years, but I can see their records, and they do report, and they pay, and they've been a good corporate citizen. They've helped us in the past and whatnot, so I don't foresee any issues with that. But again, with even if their reporting isn't even there at all, the minimum payments stay. So it's not like there's a percentage against whatever they have at that time. It's a percentage against what they have right now, and for 5 whole years.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do you know what their assets were worth in the prior year?
Sure, I do. It was 1.605, 1,605,000.
So when was their first application given in? Do you, if you,
I'm gonna have to defer to Randy on that.
No,
Well,
okay.
maybe 2 or 3 years ago or so, I believe,
Around that time frame. I remember the exact, I
So,
would say,
more than 2, because I wasn't here.
oh, okay. So were they planning, I don't know if you know this, were they planning on purchasing all this equipment back then?
I know they were planning on expanding their operation, the Bay Crane, the team from Bay Crane are here, and they can answer that a little bit better. I think they were intending to, grow their business here in town, and they've been a great partner to the town thus far, and looking to expand on that. So I think that was the intent of the conversation. But if you guys would like to come up and say a little, I also wanted to give you guys the opportunity to talk about how you guys are, expanding up there and continuing to grow in the community.
Good evening, council members. My name is Nicholas Goodyear. I'm here on behalf of Bay Crane. I'm a Bay Crane employee and also attorney in Rhode Island. I'm based out of the Smithfield location. We're seeking this TSA for the purposes of what these agreements are designed. The stability will permit significant investment in the existing facilities at the Lydia N. Road property, including updates and expansion to infrastructure. Likewise, the continuing investment in equipment, all of which will correlate to the hiring of more employees. The Northeast branch was the third location that Bay Crane had. It's been operating in Smithfield since 2013. It's been quite successful over the past 2 years. And the branch size has increased from 65 employees to over 100 now. Over the past decade, Bay Crane overall has expanded to 17 branches. The local and company-wide expansion has been made possible through key equipment acquisitions and review of the schedule that was provided to you folks and circulated. About a half dozen of those pieces were new equipment purchases, and a significant amount were purchased out of a competitor and relocated to Smithfield, anticipating this TSA would be entered into. The Lydian location is working very well, given the accessibility, along with the accessibility and location of various hospitality-related businesses. For folks, I might imagine it's crane work, but it's also specialized transportation. So there's a lot of traffic in and out in terms of food, hotels, restaurants, gas stations, all utilized on the Route 116-7 corridor. All those are available, all frequented by Bay Crane customers and Bay Crane employees. So they're planning an addition on the facility, which is currently working its way through planning and zoning, and anticipating the acquisition of even more equipment, which will actually make the payment go up in terms of the schedule that we've worked out with Chris. And Chris and other town staff have been really helpful in organizing this, and preparing it. So we would like to thank them as well. In sum, it's really a win-win. Both parties benefit, as does the local, in general, the town, particularly the businesses in that area. There's a commitment to the future investment here, as opposed to what was mentioned. In fact, they recently acquired a property in Tewksbury, so they're local in this region, and the equipment could be, essentially shifted out for tax advantages. So they'd like to keep it here for the reasons I said. It's really central to New England. It's doing well.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Sorry. You said you're an employee, or you represent
I
them
am
as
an
an attorney?
employee.
So
and,
how long have you been with the company?
3 weeks.
Oh, okay. So that explains why you're not on the roster.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
That's what I was wondering.
I've worked with Attorney Galone
Okay.
and left private practice to work at one of my major clients, actually. So
Okay.
it's new for me, and representative of the, not a Smithfield resident, I'm a Cumberland resident. So shortened my commute a little bit. And
In-house attorney, you said?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
with that said, I have Joan Mitchell, who's been with the branch here since I'd opened in Cumberland in 2010 and moved to Smithfield in 2013. And between us, we would be available for any questions that you might have. We appreciate your consideration and look forward to the continuing relationship here.
Thank
How
you.
many employees are Smithfield residents?
There are a few, and there's ingrained in this is a commitment to give preference to Smithfield residents moving forward. I believe there's about a half dozen presently. It's a specialized company. We're a local union. All the operators, local. So it's kind of technical in terms of people that do get hired, but administratively, they're Cumberland, Pawtucket, Lincoln residents, North Smithfield, all coming and converging here and supporting, Jay's Deli and.
What's the name of the union?
Is it
what?
local?
I do what we need, local 57
Okay.
and local 4, I met.
Thank you.
I'm learning on
Okay.
it.
No problem. You're new. You're doing a good job. Okay.
I'm not sure if anybody else has any other questions. And
Good.
So you are planning to expand?
Yeah, there's actually, they were before zoning for an addition on the facility, but that's not involved in this is tangible tax. That
Right.
will actually increase the real estate tax assessment, so it's going to be another benefit to the town. Of the
Square footage on the addition.
10,000 square feet.
When are you looking at that time frame?
It was before zoning last month, and they're trying to.
Great.
So just to be clear, any additional assets, in other words, if you get 10 more cranes or something to that effect, those would be covered under this agreement and they would be
Yes.
taxed under this agreement.
Yes.
And the rate would depend upon when you acquired them.
What year it comes in?
What year.
Correct.
So the year would correspond to the percentage in this chart as to what the percentage of the tax.
Yes. Yes.
Now, you said you had other locations. Bay Crane has other locations nearby that you could move the cranes to.
Right. It was a facility in Connecticut and 2 locations in Massachusetts. One was very recently acquired.
And do those have more or less favorable depreciation rules as opposed to Smithfield?
That's a technical question. I don't know if Chris looked into that.
I know the tax rates are lower.
Yeah, I would suspect, given my experience as an attorney for handling other things, that to remain competitive, the states would have the similar depreciation schedules on their tangibles. So that's a state level depreciation schedule. I would think that Connecticut and Massachusetts would be on par, like we are on par with sales tax and so forth. It might skew a little bit, but you wouldn't want to have something really low that everybody would move their stuff to that state.
So why now versus like a few years ago? It just didn't go through? Or
Well,
what happened?
in 2022, they acquired a competitive company, the assets, the cranes, out of New York, and were able to redistribute that equipment through the several branches, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and so they shifted a lot here. This has become a real successful branch, particularly during the pandemic. It was really successful, and working their way into the Boston market. They're able to work out of Smithfield and accommodate the Boston market without being in Massachusetts, and they like to keep it here, quite frankly.
How many of these cranes that are on this list that we were given are from the other company?
I did highlight that, I believe. Six of them were new purchases. That includes the 2 forklifts, and then, so
Obviously, we know.
it's like a dozen that were acquired through
Through the
the
other-
purchase of the company in New York.
Do we know how old they were?
I don't know offhand how old they were. Relatively new, I don't think.
Relatively?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This application is dated April 24th, 2023, which is it's seeking a tax stabilization agreement that goes into effect on July, like right now, July 1st of this year. And my question is there any reason why this was submitted so close to the beginning of our fiscal year?
I believe Chris and Joan have been working on this for about a year, I think. It's been a while. I don't know if the application was finalized in April. I was just right before I came
Chris, if you want to come up and just
on
talk
board,
about that.
so.
So we've been in discussions with Bay Crane since over a year ago. The asset list was provided to us approximately 1 year ago today, and the formal application was late. Yeah, the informal application, the discussions had been going on for many, many months before, but by the time everything got to the point where we could kind of solidify everything, the application ended up coming in, I want to say maybe March or April. And then there was the process that we had to go through.
Expand on that, the ordinance, which was recently approved and to be essentially codified with enabling legislation, dictates a time schedule that when an application is submitted, the hearing has to be provided within a certain amount of days through the Budget Commission, and then get referred to this council. So that might account for the actual timing of the submittal.
Well, I know,
That added a significant amount of time, lag time to the process because of the scheduling.
a new ordinance also indicates that the, if it's a new business, which this isn't, but if it was a new business, the application would have to be in before January 31st in order to apply to the fiscal year that's coming up.
Yeah, so I guess there's a differences,
Anthony, if you wanted to speak upon that.
What kind of that pertains to new construction?
yeah, what would be these are adaptive, I would say. Oftentimes, like you will likely deal with, as my former office did with Johnston, with the Amazon there, you're going to have to deal with a similar situation on 116 when that rolls in. It's that being new construction and a big project. What you do, what versus tangible versus real property, new development, existing development where there's a significant uptick. I think Chris did an excellent job explaining where the influx could really skew things for budget purposes. And
Yeah, I mean, this is really, receiving an application this close to the beginning of the fiscal year is not advantageous at all for our budget process. It really isn't. And, you know, I'm thinking that we need to amend this ordinance to make sure that we don't have.
that might be something for you to consider if it puts him in a bind.
Because it puts things, we have to guess as to what the tax rate's going to be. Based on the possibility that an application could be filed and based on the possibility that it might be approved by the town council. So I think there's way too much guessing that has to go on, and
I agree with that.
That's not your fault, but I'm thinking, you know, maybe we should look at the ordinance.
We may need to tighten up the process. This is the first time we use the ordinance since
Right,
we
so we're learning.
codified it last year. So it's definitely got some housekeeping probably that we might want to think about on a go forward.
The application too, I mean, it says proposed additional personal property, but they already have it, so it's not proposed or additional. It's just a little misleading. I mean, it's just like a minor thing, but still,
Yeah,
just saying.
it's sort of just telling you what the new number is going to be.
But I think what the problem was too, was that the piece of the existing with the depreciation came into that number too. And
That's
we figured
true,
that
too,
out,
yes.
the wording after. So we definitely, I think between the ordinance and the application, we'll sit down and flush that out and make both
Agreed.
better for, you know, whenever in the future.
It's just tough to think of every possible thing that's going to happen. And we went through that ordinance a lot, and there was a lot of revisions, and we did our best to make it. And now we're putting it to the test, and we see there may be some minor changes that need to be done. But I think overall, the purpose of the ordinance is to be able to allow the council to do this. And I think that this is a great one to use it for, just because of the amount of assets that they brought in. Pretty significant, really significant, actually.
Have we had a case like this before where, or a business, I should say a business like this before, where we've had assets of this value that are mobile, as opposed to, you know, normally we're talking about real estate on these things?
There are very few businesses in town that have that level of assets. I mean, like National Grid's probably one of them. Maybe like the CVS, they might have about half that, and they're treated anyway. it represents a 16% increase in what we were taxing prior, so it's
I
a
meant
huge.
not just the amount, but the mobility of the.
I
asset.
think
Right, as
it's
far as
an oddity.
tangibles, yeah, there's not really many businesses that have that amount of tangibles in town at all. Like, off the top of my head, the first thing that comes is National Grid. That's not really movable either because it's kind of connected to telephone poles. It's still considered tangible. I can't think of who would be next, really. Like the Coxcoms and the Verizon Onlines, they have a good amount of tangible as well. But then after that, it really drops off pretty quick. I mean, the majority of our tangible accounts are really small.
So if the town approves this, the town, over the 5 years gets about, I think it was 3.1 million.
Three and change million, yeah, it's a little better than 600 a year, 600,000 a year on
Average of
average.
over $600,000 a year.
Yep, correct. Let's get the real answer. Hang on. Is 3.175 million
Right.
over the 5-year period.
Over the 5-year period. And the applicant would save about, I calculated about 2.9 million, something like that.
Yep, that's correct. There's also, not that I expect this to happen, but if anything does happen, the relief that we give through this TSA will all be recouped if they do end up ceasing operations.
They cease operation.
Yeah, at any time during that 5-year, all the relief that we offered will have to be paid back.
Right, so what we're looking at now in terms of numbers is if we disapprove it, we'll get 1.4 million, and then for this year, and then the rest is speculative because they could move the assets around. They could move them to their other locations. If we do approve it, then we're guaranteed those amounts that are listed in the attached exhibit, which add up to approximately 3.1 million over the 5 years. Is that a correct summary?
That's correct, except that we would get 1.5 million from Bay Crane, but we wouldn't get an extra 1.5 million because then we would be right up against our levy cap. I think we only have about 150,000.
I think what the councilman's speaking of, the council vice president speaking about is that if we say we got 1.5 million this year, we're guaranteed nothing for the following years because they have the opportunity to move out of town. Where with this agreement, we're guaranteed 3.175 million at minimum from Bay Crane themselves.
That's correct.
That's
And
exactly what he was stating.
That's the whole purpose of the agreement, is to stabilize
And
for
that's-
both sides.
And
but
that's really
us
the
as well.
benefit to the town.
Correct. We'll know what that number is going to be each year. So we don't have to say, oh, I hope those guys don't take a bunch of, that kind of a situation. This guarantees those payments. Without this guarantee in place, you may get a bunch of money from them this year, but then there'd be no guarantee on any future years.
Chris, if they, as of December 30th, if they decide to move all that equipment out, then you're done for the following year, you don't get any benefit.
If they cease operations, they have to pay the relief back. If they just get rid of the equipment, they have to pay the minimums in the
But I'm
exhibit.
saying if we denied the tax stabilization agreement, it was denied, you get taxed on, whatever they get taxed on this year for all the equipment that's there. If they decide to move that equipment by December 31st of 2023, then the town's out of luck. The following year, you're back to the $1.4 million.
Right, we need to levy that from everybody else, basically.
So what if
That's
they
correct.
moved just one crane? So say they had an emergency that needed a crane at another location and they had to move it throughout this time period. Is it null and void at that point? Or
Not at all,
No,
no. So
okay.
as long as they maintain operations, then the agreement will remain in place. Regardless of if they remove any equipment, these minimum payments in the agreement must be made.
Okay,
If they increase equipment, then they would be able, they would increase at the rate that they're at on that TSA at that particular year. But under no circumstances can we ever get any less than what that base tax
okay,
is.
thank you. What does it cost to move a crane to your other location?
That might be a good Joan question.
Quite a bit.
Some are mobile, some are taken apart to.
What's an average? Can you throw a number at me? Like an average estimate?
$5 to say, I went.
$5,000?
from
Oh, that's not a lot.
Avon, just for the heck of it, but they want, I should,
Oh, okay. Thank you.
but. I mean,
Clearly not
you
enough to
know,
disincentivize
You're
it.
gonna go to work up there for the day and come back, so not a big deal, but they're
course.
based here, this is
Sure.
their home base.
Yep.
It goes to where the work is on a daily basis.
Sure, sure.
Their garage there.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public would like to speak on this?
Again, thank you.
Thank
for
you
your
very much.
consideration.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good evening, council members. Paul Santucci, 10 Appletown Road. Mr. President, this entire process is a mess from start to finish. The ordinance, the agenda item, the application. I also want to say something that should be obvious, but the town manager is not part of the council. It's a shame that he withheld this information from taxpayers. It says right here in the charter that the town manager shall be the chief administrative officer of the town, responsible to the council for the administration of all town affairs placed in the manager's charge. He's not to set tax policy. One of the problems with the ordinance that I see is that we should either add on wheels as opposed to or in addition to personal property, because the way that I read that ordinance, I can't tell that personal property includes anything on wheels that can move. It's a lot different than having a $3 million building that's a fixed asset that will appreciate as opposed to something that will depreciate. And so the town is not going to have really the value of those assets for a very long period. The other item is the agenda. Conveniently, tomorrow's Budget and Financial Review Board meeting is canceled. Very convenient. It's 35 days to the day of when the draft minutes of their meeting were due. So the public, again, is not able to see what the Budget and Financial Review Board has stated. So I'll ask you, Mr. President, can I get a copy of those draft minutes since they're due tomorrow?
We can make sure to send it to you, sir.
I mean, can I get them tonight?
I don't have them right with me, sir. And I know we do have the vice chair of the Budget and Financial Review Board who will be more than happy to answer any questions about what was discussed at the Budget and Financial Review Board.
So in terms of this agenda item, if this was in the budget, then why did Councilman Tassoni vote for that? Why wasn't this that transparent in the budget? In other words, if he's recusing himself right now because of a matter related to the applicant, why would he be not recusing himself from the budget, which clearly had a major amount of money that will benefit the applicant? Additionally, why did Councilman Tassoni second the motion to schedule the public hearing? If he's, recusing himself now, why would he second? I can't understand that. Does not make any sense to me. The application itself, the procedure, when I read through it from top to bottom, it's a mess. The council, I know, refers to the Budget and Financial Review Board for the advisory recommendation. They reply within 30 days of the receipt. And then it's advertised, et cetera. But as Vice President Ionati had said, the application was dated April 24th, and now the town has to scramble. No one really knows, as far as the public goes, what we were going to wind up giving for relief to the applicant. And it was supposed to be due no later than January 31st, but it was signed on April 24th. From top to bottom, I think that this is just a shame. I just cannot get over the process of what we've had go on in this. And I hope and pray that we'll do better going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, are work vehicles included in tangible tax? Probably a stupid question, but
Registered vehicles that have a plate used to be taxed with the excise tax, but we no longer issue an excise tax. So most of their vehicles are not in that category, though.
Most,
That would be
okay.
like an over-the-road, like a pickup truck, kind of, or a dump truck.
oh, I,
They had a excise tax bill, maybe 10, 20,000 or so for the registered vehicles prior to the excise tax phase out.
you said dump trucks are included or they're not?
No, anything that would be registered
Yeah,
is no longer taxable in Rhode
sure,
Island.
thank you.
Do we have the recommendation from the Budget and Financial Review Board? Do we have that?
They voted it. I'm not sure what what would that look like?
They voted in the affirmative to support moving the recommendation forward.
Right, there's nothing in writing, though, is there? Like a written recommendation? I mean, shouldn't we have that, something like that?
Right, we do have
I
the,
was asking.
Yeah.
yes, there's nothing else in writing from them.
Tom Hodgkins, 200 Fardham Pike. On that point, records of votes are by law to be disclosed within 2 weeks of the vote. So I'm unclear how there was a vote or what there was a vote on of the Budget and Financial Review Board and what the motion was that is long overdue being disclosed. Also on that point, it's my understanding that the June 8th budget workshop was a town council workshop. We're now at the council's second meeting since that June 8th workshop. There have been no minutes for that meeting. So it's over a month of that June 8th workshop where the budget was discussed. If I understand the discussion earlier, this tax stabilization agreement and the impact on the tax levy was accounted for in this year's budget, is that correct?
Yes.
And that's what was discussed by all members of the council at the June 20th budget hearing, correct? Well, the minutes for the June 20th meeting, which you approved earlier tonight, there's discussion that the Bay Cranes tax stabilization agreement was accounted for in the tax levy, correct?
Yes, I just didn't understand your question. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Hodgkins.
And then all members of the council then voted on that budget, correct? I mean, it's my understanding that they did. So there were 5 votes for it. Has the town received a recusal form with respect to this hearing tonight?
Yes,
When was that received?
tonight.
And is that the first one that the town's received?
I don't know if there was another one.
Did the town receive a recusal form for the May 16th meeting?
For, John.
No, not for
Okay.
May 16th.
On that recusal form, did the basis for that recusal first arise after June 20th, 2023?
Wait, can I look at the recusal form? He's got to fill out what his interest was. The reason for the recusal is missing.
Is it incomplete?
It's incomplete.
Does the recusal form indicate whether that was filed with the State Ethics Commission?
No.
I spoke to the State Ethics Commission today, and they have not received any conflict of interest filings from Councilman Tassoni in 2023. And the town doesn't know whether you received a recusal form for the May 16th meeting.
I don't believe he has.
I wanted to understand the process of how the rate for the stabilization agreement came about. How did the Budget and Financial Review Board determine that? Did they use a formula, or was there a number suggested to them?
The rates in the stabilization agreement?
Correct.
Mr. Celeste, if you want to explain how that was derived?
The TSA rates in the agreement were derived basically, I fit them into a 5-year agreement, which was the general idea of how long a tangible agreement should last. And so it starts at 25 and it's just 15% a year. And then the last year is 85. So the following year when they're off is 100. So it was sort of just interpolated, kind of a straight line over that time period.
Did that originate with the Budget and Financial Review Board, or did that originate from you?
That originated from me.
I'm a little unclear here how the budget process took place, because there's an application in April. There's apparently discussion about this for some considerable period of time before April. At the May 16th council meeting, I asked what the amount of the agreement was, what the rate was, and what the answer was that it was not determined, had not been discussed. It would be discussed by the Budget and Financial Review Board. And now, and I don't know what happened at the Budget and Financial Review Board because I couldn't go on June 8th. I don't think it was a regularly scheduled meeting. And it was at 5:30. And then, so that happens, and then this rate happens, and then somehow it's already cooked into the budget. I don't, and I wasn't at the June 8th workshop, so I don't know if it was the levy number or the assessment that was presented at the June 8th workshop take into account the stabilization agreement.
Can you repeat that, Tom?
Sure. So at the council's June 8th budget workshop, did the budget that was presented to the council at 6 PM on June 8th include the stabilization agreement for Bay Crane?
Chris, can you answer that question?
So the budget included an estimated tax levy and estimated tax rates. And the final budget, when it was June 20th, when we finished the whole job, was the point where we actually set the final rates, which were adjusted based on what the tax levy is, because the budget has a tax levy number in it. And to achieve that, we use the rates to move it around. So there was amendments made by the council to the budget on the 20th. And once those were completed, the rate was set at that point to generate the correct levy for the budget based on any changes that were made at that time.
This is, I guess, this is confusing for me because there's on May 16th, the rate for the stabilization agreement's unknown. On June 8th at 5:30, when the Budget and Financial Review Board meets to first take up this agreement, when there'd been no discussion of the rate, that's done. And then the council meets a half hour later on June 8th. And the amount of this stabilization agreement is already in the budget.
I think the one piece of that, Mr. Hodgkins, is that total tax dollars are in the budget. The aspect of how it's allocated is not finalized until the final budget's approved and how the allocation of rates are. So all it is a tax dollar to make revenue.
But on June 8th, there was an assumption of the tax levy at the council's workshop at 6 PM, right?
It was an assumption of the tax levy based on the total expenditures for the budget.
And that assumption of the tax levy included the assumption that the Bay Crane stabilization agreement would be voted on favorably, right?
Not necessarily. It was at a rate at that point. I mean, it's total tax dollars, Mr. Hodgkins. It's not specifically one way or the other. Just like now, it's maximum tax rates, and until the final levy's certified, the rates can go down.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that whole process and how this came about. I have a couple comments generally on the tax stabilization ordinance as well. I mean, we had hearings on it, we had workshops at it, and I think there was, a lot of commentary on it. I mean, I think what at the basis of it is, we live in a state that has disastrous tax policies for businesses. We are perennially one of the worst states to do business in. I actually saw another ranking that came out today. I think Rhode Island's 46 out of 50, so you might as well just call us last. And that's based on the business tax structure. And, you know, we're also one of the worst states for income growth. But regardless of that policy, as a town, as a municipality, there's not much we can do about that. But the tax system that we has to be applied fairly, and it has to be applied fairly to all businesses and individuals. With respect to tangible property, I had suggested to the council when this ordinance was being discussed that tangible property shouldn't be included as a basis for a stabilization agreement. The basis for that is that the idea of a stabilization agreement is that a business will ramp up to paying what their increased tax rate is. There's no ramp up in a tangible tax because the assets are immediately depreciating down to years 7, 8, 9, 10, where they're down to 30% and then there's no tax at all. The difference, I mean, for instance, that Amazon project that was mentioned, a tax stabilization where they're going to ramp up to a big number because there's a concrete asset, the property there in the town. So, you know, I don't think it makes sense to do these sort of tangible property deals. With respect to the employment, it was also discussed during those workshops that there's no requirement or verification for the employment. So even though there was an increase of employees, there's no requirement that those employees or that number of employees have to be maintained over the 5 years of the agreement. There's mention in the stabilization agreement of an exchange of in-kind services. There's no value placed on that. So, you know, maybe it's a small number, maybe it's a big number. I mean, great if it's in-kind services, but I think from a transparency perspective, the ordinance doesn't provide consideration of in-kind services for a tax stabilization agreement. It's not written in there. We just made the ordinance. And I think where there's no value there, how does anybody know what the value of the tax stabilization agreement is if you have these unknown factors? It's just a matter of basic transparency. And I think if you were a business that came to the council again and you said, well, I want the deal that Bay Crane got, we don't, if there's this unknown value of in-kind services, it's not quantified. We don't really know what the deal is that Bay Crane got. Also, with respect to the future purchases that would change the agreement, you know, I don't know that that's really what's considered under the ordinance, that sort of change wouldn't result in coming back to the council for consideration of you know, it'd actually be more tax relief that would be due to them. You know, so I think generally, you know, these agreements, they're envisioned on new business or attracting business that wouldn't be here otherwise. And I think when you hear that a business bought assets or a company last year and they're here already and now they're asking for tax relief, I don't see how that's any different or why any other business in Smithfield wouldn't say, I bought a new oven or I bought some new computers. Why can't I have the tax relief? And just say, well, I wouldn't have bought them if, you know, we're going to move out of Smithfield. I mean, I don't, you know, I think these are pretty particular special types of agreement. And I just don't know how we can say that one business should get the relief and we have another of other small businesses or medium-sized businesses or large businesses in town that, you know, buy tangible property every day, invest in their business, and they're not getting any tax relief. I just don't see how that makes sense. Thank you.
I have a question. If we were to continue this public hearing to the next meeting, how would that affect Bay Crane and the town?
I'd have to hold off the tax bills until that's done.
You'd have to what? I'm
I'd
sorry.
have to hold
We'd have
off
to hold out
tax
billing
billing
for the
until that's
taxes.
done.
Yeah.
Because the rate would change.
No, sure, that's not you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Chris.
Kenneth J. Souza, 2 Williams Road, Smithfield, Rhode Island. Vice Chair, unfortunately today, this is one of those days I don't like being a volunteer. I'm going to tell you up front. And I guess I'm here today. I was asked by town manager and the tax assessor. First, I apologize. I just found out in the last 48 hours that no transmission was sent from the board. I don't know what else to say. It wasn't
I think
something.
moving forward, there needs to be an advisory.
I don't disagree with you,
Just like the
Counselor.
planning board.
I just found out yesterday. Day before yesterday. So here's what I do want to say. There's a couple of factual misrepresentations that have been said today. Look, I'm not going to talk about the process. We've all talked about it. We beat a dead horse. I'm going to breathe about this. But for one of the factual misrepresentations that I think the previous gentleman said, was there were 2 legal meetings on June 8th. We all know this in this room. One was our meeting for about 20 or 30 minutes. We adjourned that meeting, the minutes stopped, and then there was our budget workshop between the 2 groups. Start and stop. Am I correct? Okay. So it was not one meeting. It could not have been one meeting because it was a specific workshop and the law that we had this discussion. And I don't know anything about those minutes. I'll let the town clerk deal with that. Second, yeah, I already apologized, even though I shouldn't, but I did on behalf of the board. I agree with the today and tomorrow situation, but that's unfortunately where we are today, that you 5 or 4 have to decide, okay? We could not have met tomorrow to approve the minutes for today, okay? That just didn't happen. In fact, we moved around our meetings purposely, and you all know this, to get ahead of the cycle, because none of us felt comfortable with that because of the crampedness that we're all talking about here today. I can't change any of that. God can't change what's already happened, all right? So it is what it is. Here's what I also do want to say, and Mr. Celeste and Mr. Rossi know that what I'm probably going to say right now. We didn't look at the public policy situation. We didn't look at fairness, although we talked about it, the winners and losers that happen with these types of agreements. We didn't look at the legal issues that have been talked about today off an infinitum. That's for Councilor Galone to decide. We didn't look at state statutes. I don't look at levies. I don't even understand. I'm a pretty smart guy, but it makes my eyes roll around. We just looked at numbers.
Can I ask you a question?
No, yes.
I know, I'm just kidding. So 2 questions. When did you receive the stabilization agreement, and do you feel like that 20 to 30 minutes was enough time to analyze and discuss?
Thanks for the tough question, Councilman.
You're welcome.
The town manager and the tax assessor know that I put a lot of time and effort into, I was not in favor of this personally before this started. They both know that. I became an advocate when I saw it. I'm a numbers guy. All 4 of you know that. I'm going to look at break-evens and all that other stuff to try to look at the balance of equity. Sorry to use a legal term, Counselor, but I'm trying to look at the balance of equities, okay? I understand the balance that the previous gentleman said. I get it. I also get that we could lose money. And that's what I had to look at. So I want to repeat again, we didn't look at public policy, we didn't look at state statute, we didn't look at any of those other things. I just developed a spreadsheet, I love them, and that's what I did. And helped these 2 gentlemen out over time, and I hope it was some value for it seemed like the countless number of hours that we met and the amount of analysis that I did bring it to the board on that night before the council meeting started at 6 o'clock. That's what I am. So I want to thank Mr. Celeste and Mr. Rossi. They were invaluable. We had very honest discussions. They know that I wasn't jumping up and down about this, but I don't know what else I can say, but I had to sort of set the record straight a little bit because I apologize.
And just one thing, Dr. Souza. So the one piece too about tomorrow night's meeting, the main purpose for the cancellation of the Budget and Financial Review Board was because of the performance audit is not ready for tomorrow night, and there's no other reason to meet tomorrow night.
Correct. That's exactly right. And I didn't feel to say that, but he's 100% correct. We were supposed to talk about the performance audit tomorrow. That will be interesting. And we had no other reason to meet. We had no other reason to meet tomorrow, and that's why the meeting was canceled. It wasn't canceled for any other reason, except that was going to be the only agenda, and we were going to have a presentation and and we're still behind on looking at the draft agreement. I know I am. Maybe the town manager's ahead of me. So that's the only reason for tomorrow night. There was no other reason. You all know, I just speak the truth.
Is your recommendation the same after hearing all these other pieces that don't have to necessarily do with numbers?
From me, yes. Because I said the same thing to the town manager. Why shouldn't Cellos, I'm just going to pick them, why shouldn't they have this agreement? Well, they don't have $24 million of tangible personal property. I think Mr. Celeste said there's nobody, am I correct? Nobody anywhere near that. That's just a fact. That's an objective fact. I know it's transportable. I'm concerned about that too, okay? I'm concerned about reporting. I asked questions about VIN numbers and serial numbers to make sure that we can validate what this company will hopefully certify to. I don't know if it's notarized or whatever. I don't know all of that stuff. But I agree. I think the numbers, the 3.17 is a fact. It's a fact. Instead of what it could be or what it may never be. It may go from X because they've already legally deposited the equipment as of a couple of months ago, several months ago. They could withdraw it within the next 3 or 4 months. Something we don't know. If you do approve the agreement tonight, or approve the agreement period, there is a floor. Okay, now if they also leave town, for the lack of a better term, then we'd have to recapture the difference between the discount and 100% at that point. I mean, we looked at these, and I know the town manager, I asked all these questions. I tried to, but I'm not a lawyer, so again, I didn't look at the agreement. I just looked at the numbers. We just looked at the numbers. Any other questions before I go walk back to my seat? Can we breathe now? Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Gary Tacoyan, 6 Elmhurst Drive, Greenville. I just want to start by saying, I know you all live in Smithfield, obviously you're on the council, but someday you should visit Bay Crane. Stop in your office, get a vest and a hard hat, and go visit Bay Crane. It is one of the most impressive sights you've ever seen in your life. This is a big company. When you watch the national news and you see that bridge deck that's collapsed in Connecticut, or you see the Twin Towers collapse, you look in the background on the national news and you'll see Bay Crane, spotless, red and white Bay Crane. They're an excellent, clean company. I have no skin in this game at all. But one thing that, Rachel, you said about moving a piece of equipment, you take that crane that goes to Connecticut when that bridge collapsed on 95. Those cranes are big. The counterweight is on one trailer. One track is on another trailer. Another track is on the other trailer. The main part's on another trailer. The booms are all on trailers, all with escorts. All can be moved at certain times of the day. All have to stop because they can't go through the town at a certain time. A lot of money to move those big cranes. I know, being in town, you've seen them. You see those precast concrete structures. One of them's at Whipple Field. All the electrical for all the lights are in that concrete building. You go to the recreation, Bobby Kane, there's at least 3 or 4 of those concrete precast buildings there. There's 2 at the high school. Josh Wilbur, the general manager, just called me recently and said, we got another one. You think the town can use it? I said, call the highway department. Sure enough, it's near the recycling in the back of the building. To move those things, they're big, they're heavy, they need a big crane. They don't charge us for that. And they've moved a lot of them in town. They're good to the town. They're an asset to be in the town. They're a big company. And it's just, they're good. I want to say, I can't talk like Paul or these other guys who are rattling off numbers and this and that, and I don't really understand it all. But I live by a motto, and some of you guys, some of you people know me. And a very wealthy man told me this, and maybe this isn't ethically correct right now, but pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And if you live by that, you'll be successful. And if the town could just act like a pig, not like a hog, they'll come out on top of this. I don't know the legality of it, but, measure twice, cut once.
Thank you.
Mr. President, just for the record, the Budget Financial Review Board tomorrow night did have another item. They should have been approving their minutes. And those were what I was talking about. This is Rhode Island General Law 42-46-7. And those minutes should have been approved within 35 days or at the next regularly scheduled meeting. So that was an agenda item that should have been taken care of. Unfortunately, it was a day after this, and we still don't have those draft minutes. But it stinks to the high heavens. The optics alone are terrible. Thank you.
I just want to say, I think that, I don't know Bay Crane at all, but I understand that you have done a lot for the town. You've been in the town, 10 years or so? I mean, that was really, aside from the main thing, which was financial benefit to the town, I mean, that was really the main thing, which I went back and forth on this, for so long with Vice President Iannotti, this is not an easy decision, but that really helped. So we appreciate that.
Can I just say that?
Can you need to come up to the microphone. I apologize. Just, we're going to get you on camera, and your name and your address. Thank you.
All I want to say is that for the 10 years plus that we've been here, we have been a good citizen to the town. We support the schools, the teams, the kids, the YMCA, the police department, the fire department, and what we give in kind to the town. And we love being here. We're invested in our property. We're expanding. We may not have a lot of Smithfield residents as employees, but because we have specialized professional employees that may not all live here, but I can only tell you that our goal and our desire is to stay here in Smithfield. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
My hesitation was really just the process and all of that. It wasn't really you guys per se, so I'm just speaking for myself, so. Thank you.
Hi, Chris Bellotti, 13 Crest Circle. I don't know, obviously I'm not a procedure guy. I think I probably agree with the procedure questions that some people had, but big picture, I think the town of Smithfield ought to be pro-business. The residential tax rate is extremely low. And yet, if you look at the cost of running the town, something like 60% of that is the school department. And so the town loses money on every house that's here, and it makes it up on the businesses. And so, charging exorbitant rates to businesses and chasing them away is not a best practice. I just took a quick look, and just for edification, the personal property tax rate in Tewksbury, Massachusetts, where they said they have another location, is $26.59. The Rhode Island is known for having really horrible personal property tax rates. So Smithfield is no different from any other town in Rhode Island, but we are not competitive with Massachusetts at all. And so whether, it should have been done, 6 months ago, or whether it should be effective for 2023 instead of for 2022, you guys can discuss that. But I obviously support helping, to encourage business. I also agree that, when you look at some of these other businesses, Cello's somebody mentioned, and whatever, obviously they're paying these higher personal property tax rates. I would support looking at the personal property tax rate as a whole and whether or not it should be lower. I think if we could grow the commercial portion of this town, it would solve a whole lot of financial problems for us. Because obviously that's the profit center and the houses are the loser. So that's my opinion. That's it.
Thank you. Ed DeMail, 75 Whipple Road. I agree with Gary Taconian. I remember going on Valley Street 50 years ago. I used to see Bay Crane. They were there. If it's a quality company coming into the best town in the state, I'd like to hold on to them. And like Gary said, half a loaf is better than none. That means anything. I do remember people telling me in the crane business and the construction, they can cost a lot and they depreciate quick. I don't know financial stuff, but if they're a quality company, like I believe they are, so be it.
Thank you. Any other comments? We'll close the public hearing. Pleasure of the
Randy,
council.
question before we make any action on this. Delaying this would delay the tax letters going out?
The tax bills, everything,
Tax
correct.
bills? Okay. I do not think it is in the best interest of the town even to throw off the entire, to cut off our nose to spite our face in this instance. I do not advise holding off on this. If at the appropriate time, if we're entertaining a motion, I would like to approve with the amendments that were proposed. There was something by Councilwoman Toppy in terms of addressing some language in the lines about
The application.
yeah, about proposed, the language of actual versus proposed in the spreadsheet on in our packet. I would like to see that amended to say actual. And then my second amendment would be to adjust the dates for the assessment to be completed as of the application be completed as of no later than April 30th, April 31st? Is that a date?
2 months.
Are you saying we need to amend the ordinance?
No, the timetable, the timesheet as it's written.
Are you talking about in Exhibit A?
I think he means both.
Both, I do mean both, Exhibit A and also there's no exhibit attached to this one. The one where it has the depreciation assessment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That would, I guess, in the total of the packet be page 25.
And specify for new businesses and existing businesses, there should be,
And what we can do is with that, is included in part of that motion, then we can just put that on our notes to amend, to bring back and look at the amendments to the ordinance and work on that at a future meeting.
I'd agree to that. So moved.
second.
Any more discussion?
I'd like to just discuss my own position on this. I'm generally not in favor of these tax stabilization agreements for much of the reasoning put forth by Mr. Hodgkins, namely that where government's getting too entangled with business. We're picking winners and losers of business. Why do we have one business coming in and we're giving them an agreement? Why, what about the rest of the businesses in the town? How does it make them feel? So I'm generally not in favor of them. But this is, I've struggled with this one quite a bit. Not only because, Bay Crane has done a lot for the town. They appear to be a really very good business. And that this agreement, they're going to provide further services for the town. I mean, they didn't really have to agree to do that, I don't think. but also because I'm struggling with it because it's a very unusual situation where the asset can actually be removed from the town. Normally, these are agreements involving real estate, but here we have, and that's why I was asking the question of Mr. Celeste about, have we ever had a situation like this where we have assets that have $24 million in value that can be moved from the town? And this makes a huge difference in our budget process. And so, we could collect, like I said, the 1.4 million that's owed now because of the assessment on December 31st. And then, these assets could be removed from the town to a more favorable tax location, and then we'll have a big budget hole next year. So I'm thinking that if there is an exception, this is the exception to my general opposition to these types of agreements. Also, I like the fact that the agreement is for only 5 years. We are allowed 10 years, and I realize it's because it's a depreciating asset and not an appreciating asset. So I have to, I look at my own philosophy, but I also have to look at what's in the best interest of the town, the best interest of the taxpayer. And we're already so far along on this budget process that I think our not approving this agreement would be disruptive to the whole process. And I plan on correcting this problem by introducing an amendment to our ordinance so that in the future, these tax stabilization agreements, if they want to be applicable to the fiscal year starting on July 1st, they have to be submitted at least by January 31st, because we have the town manager submitting a budget to the Budget and Financial Review Board on March 1st. And how is he supposed to know how to set the tax rate? And so, we don't want to be guessing about what the tax rate should be. We need to know. And so I think that's very important, and that should apply to every single one of these types of agreements going forward. And I will be introducing that amendment. So that being said, this was a very close call because of my dislike for these types of agreements. But, balancing the factors and this being a unique case, I plan to vote for the agreement.
Thank you. So do we have a second?
You had a motion, you had a second.
All discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to licenses. Consider, discuss, and act upon approving the annual renewal of 2 pool table licenses as listed as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulation and local ordinances. Sorry, I feel like that. This is for Portuguese American Social and Athletic Club and also the Last Resort.
Motion to approve both pool table licenses.
We have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item B, consider, discuss, and act upon approving a new weapons license for High Table Outfitters, LLC, DBA High Table Outfitters, located at 49 Cedar Swamp Road, Suite 11, for the repair of weapons, with the hour of operation to be Monday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., Wednesday, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., Friday, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., as applied, subject to compliance with all state regulations, local ordinances, and a copy of a retail sales permit.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. Old business, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a request for a block party to be held from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturday, June 29, 2023, on Kimberly Ann Drive.
Council President, there was a lot of review that was conducted by both the police chief and the fire chief on this matter, speaking with the person that came forward with the request. and we're recommending for the town council to deny this request for a block party due to the severe safety of the situation.
You need a motion?
We need a motion to deny or accept this.
Make a motion to deny the application.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business. A, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing the ratification of the proposed collective bargaining agreement between the town of Smithfield and Smithfield Lodge Number 17 Fraternal Order of Police, pending final approval by the town solicitor.
Thank you, Council President. I'd definitely like to start off by thanking the members of the FOP for working very closely with the town bargaining team on this. We were able to get numerous cleanups throughout the contract, which will help both sides, further understand the actual collective bargaining agreement with ease. We were able to gain modifications to the health plan, reducing the medical costs, as well as increasing the contributions towards our health coverage. Additionally, we added an increase to the other post-employment benefits to help to tackle that liability, as well as offsets with revenue from police details to offset some of the raises that were included in this agreement. So I'm asking the town council for passage of this.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item item B, consider, discuss, and act upon approving a memorandum of agreement between the town of Smithfield and Smithfield Lodge Number 17 Fraternal Order of Police, pending final approval by the town solicitor.
Thank you, Council President. This memorandum is really to solidify items that were corrected in the bargaining process and corrected in the agreement. So this memorandum is just to deal with two grievances that were pending during the negotiating time.
Thank you.
Passage.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a payment to Tom Rutska, is that right? In an amount not to exceed $3,025.00 for the purchase of materials and labor to build 4 bridges at Camp Shepherd.
Thank you, Council President. This item came before the Camp Shepherd Subcommittee at our last meeting. Tom is a great asset to this town. Besides being an educator, he is also the trail maintenance worker for the Land Trust. And over the time of working with the Land Trust, he has built numerous pedestrian or human walking bridges that are all natural to go within the environment. And as part of trying to complete the loop at Camp Shepherd and get those trails open, I would recommend the council for us to move forward with the purchase and the building of these bridges.
Thank you.
Move passage.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a request from Ocean State Multisport to hold a Spine and Brain Institute road race in Deerfield Park on Sunday, May 19th, 2024.
Thank you, Council President and council members. Unfortunately, I can't even think of his name. Gary is unable to be with us tonight. He was under the weather. This is their normal circulation of runs that are handled within Deerfield Park. They've been very successful, helped numerous nonprofit and fundraising efforts around the state, and usually focuses within this area. So this item would actually be on Sunday, May 19th, 2024. He's usually way ahead of schedule, so that's what this race is for.
You want to do it?
There's enough time to train, so I'll get to it.
Move passage.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item E, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a request from Ocean State Multisport to hold a Sour Apple Road Race in Deerfield Park on Sunday, July 7th, 2024.
Thank you, Council President, council members. This is exactly the same type of setup, which is just the July race. I'm not sure Sean will do this one. It's going to be a little hot, but this is the same aspect of Ocean State Multisport and their events that they put on.
Move passage.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item F, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a resolution for the submission of a proposed program year 2022, should that be 23?
Mike, is this cycle the 2022?
Yeah, it's a program year. They don't correspond to the calendar years.
Program year 2022 Community Development Block Grant Application.
Thank you, Council. Mike Phillips, Town Planner. Before you, we have just a brief memo regarding our proposed application for CDBG this year. We're proposing two projects under the CDBG program. One is for continued funding of the East Smithfield Neighborhood Center. We're requesting $500,000 to continue work on Phase 2 and Phase 3 of the Neighborhood Center, which will be basically the east wing, finishing up the main hall, the east wing, and the bowling alley wing. The other one is for Family Service of Rhode Island for improvements to a project at 111 West Greenville Road, a group home there, just to repair a deck that has been deteriorating. So those are the two applications. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
That's great. Any questions?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item G, consider, discuss, and act upon a request from the Northern Rhode Island Collaborative to extend their lease of the William Windsor Elementary School to September 14th, 2023.
Thank you, Council President. The liquidating accountant for the Northern Rhode Island Collaborative had reached out in collaboration with the collaborative to see about extending the lease for 1 month at a slightly reduced rate to allow them to finish the liquidation of all assets for the Northern Rhode Island Collaborative. The basis of the reduced rate was that it's not fully operational, and I figured it to be in the idea of 60% of operation because it's just really selling items, and they're guaranteed a top-to-bottom cleaning of the entire facility before they give the keys back over.
Thank you. Move passage.
Seconded.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item H, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a request for proposals for interior painting at the town hall.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead, Randy. No, I was just wondering, it's saying there's a walkthrough tomorrow at 10 a.m. Is that right? Wednesday, July 12th, a mandatory pre-bid site walkthrough in here.
Yeah, no, I see. I'm not sure why he put that date because that's definitely not true unless the only thing I can think of is that he drafted it based on placeholders. A lot of times he'll put the dates in, and until the council passes it, he doesn't advertise it. Unfortunately, he had to leave early today. I can't answer that question, but
It will be fixed.
it will definitely be fixed before it goes out.
Thank you.
Pleasure of the council.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item I, consider, discuss, and act upon authorizing a memorandum of understanding with the Woonasquatucket River Watershed Council for use of the Leo Bouchard Conservation Center located at 5 Waterview Drive, AP 46, Lot 215.
Mr. President, I'd move passage, but only subject to review and revision by the town solicitor.
There's some language we need to change.
Should we table it?
No. That's it with that caveat.
Seconded.
Thank you. Discussion?
Yeah, specifically, there are contradictions in this about whether this is in perpetuity, this agreement, or there's a 10-year lease. The language really needs to be worked on this and, of course, approved by the town solicitor. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 12, public comment. If you'd like to come up and speak, just state your name and your address. You're more than welcome.
One more quick one. Chris Bellotti, 13 Crest Circle. I
It's been a while, I know, but there was, you guys were working on a fourth fire station. I know there was a vote, there was a bond, referendum that passed. That was, several years ago. I also, and then the rest, I think, is all conjecture. I'm going to say it, but I could be 100% wrong, that there was a question that we haven't secured a piece of property yet. Property values have gone up, construction costs have gone up. We have not issued the debt yet, and interest rates and municipal debt, lending is much different than it was when that bond was issued. I think that a fourth fire station was a bad idea. I think it's much better to take care of the firemen that we have than to add more. And there are virtually no fires. There was a book, there was a study that was done before the fourth fire station was proposed, and it did have a whole write-up about, what a 6-minute response time was versus an 8-minute response time. But the reality is that we don't have enough fires to justify 3 fire stations, and we're talking about a fourth one. And I think Rhode Island is probably number 1 in the country in fire costs for a reason. And I think it's not because we don't pay our people, or it's not because we overpay our employees. It's because we just have too many.
What about rescue? Don't we use the fire department more for rescue now than
Yes.
for fires?
Yes. Yes. I think that's probably true. I still don't know, what, the extra fire station, I don't know that we get the benefit. If you looked at the study, I think the furthest possible distance was like in the 8 to 12-minute range. I just don't see the benefit to spending that amount of money. And I think if you did, you'd go way over the 4 million at this point. You'd probably have to start the process over with a new referendum, and the bond cost would be double probably because of the interest rate.
I personally think if it saves one life, it's worth it. So that's my opinion.
Could be yours.
Any more public comment? Motion to adjourn.
Seconded?
All those